You can access the entire episode now on our website, forbiddenknowledge.news, Rokfin, Rumble, and all podcast platforms. Through the culture creation of Hollywood, before what happened with COVID, we had a certain state that Hollywood was in and that we were used to and that we interacted with. And things have changed. Things are rapidly changing now with everything that's happened with the pandemic and everything that's unfolded after. We are having this different outlook, and what's happening to Hollywood from the inside, it seems to be crumbling and
my God,
being destroyed from the inside. And I'm very curious as to see what will rise out of those ashes. We are seeing a lot more independent folks, a lot more people like yourself and myself going out there and creating this new form of entertainment that a lot of people seem to be gravitating towards. Whenever all this first started unfolding and I looked at everything attempted to look at it from a bigger picture, it seemed like we were going through the apocalypse for a little while. Seems very doom and gloom. Wars, rumors of wars, pandemics, all these things. But as everything continued to unfold and as I got a better understanding of how everything is working, it's more of an evolution of humanity in certain ways. And the more that we understand about what's happening behind the scenes and the corruption and how we've been played, the more that we can navigate our way through these insane waters that we're seeing. And I see collectively we're slowly coming to a better understanding of everything and navigating these waters, seemingly avoiding this apocalyptic future, right? What do you think?
Well, I mean, we are in the apocalypse. We've been in the apocalypse before. It's a cyclical process that's just part of this cyclical churn that human culture seems to go through. Evolution is another thing that we're sort of conditioned to believe. We always saw, those little charts where, you start with a little chimp and it's like all of a sudden, it's a guy with like test tubes and a microscope or something.
Right.
That is Masonic. Darwinian evolution is just basically free Masonic propaganda. It's this, you can actually see, Freemasonic icons and images that, again, it's this whole thing, you're climbing this ladder that, they say the evolutionary ladder, they'll have these images of these staircases where you're going up these degrees. I mean, Darwinian, I believe in, obviously survival of the fittest. I don't believe in it like that's, I'm like some sort of Nietzschean or something, but it's just like that's kind of obvious, or it has been obvious, even though we're sort of in this period now where it seems like the unfittest are surviving, but that will correct itself. Right. But like I said, Darwinian evolution comes from the Royal Society, which is it's basically a wing of Freemasonry. And this whole idea that, we're inevitably going up these steps sort of leads to it, that these things I was talking about before, like space and space colonization and all this kind of nonsense, because it's inevitable, because that is part of our conditioning that comes to us through Hollywood and schools and science and so on, quote unquote science, which is really just, like I said, Masonic propaganda. So one thing that I like to tell people is that if you actually read the book of Revelation, it's got like the happiest ending of any story ever. You know what I'm saying? So people use the term apocalyptic because like we're conditioned by Hollywood. It's like, it's going to be like The Road, and then everything is just going to be just desolate and, we're all just going to die off and all these kind of things. That's Hollywood. That's science fiction. That's drama. That's not reality. There have been, large and small apocalypses throughout history, and it's just part of, like I said, it's just churn. It's almost like a reset on the program, and things kind of get thrown up in the air, and then they eventually fall back to earth and reform themselves. Great example is what we call the quote unquote dark ages. First of all, that's kind of a misnomer, but really what happened is that there were all these natural disasters and climate conditions that we still are trying to understand. But basically, the population of Europe was just absolutely decimated because something happened that just sort of laid everything to waste. It didn't happen in China, it didn't happen in other parts of the world. It happened like predominantly in Western Europe. I mean, the Roman Empire, which had just picked up stakes and moved to Constantinople, to Turkey, they were doing fine. I mean, but it was like Western Europe, something happened that just really messed things up. Before the colonists came in the Americas, or well, actually sort of as the colonists were coming, or maybe, I'm not exactly sure of the timeline, but there was this huge die-off in the Western Hemisphere. And some of it had to do with like being exposed to diseases like smallpox, which they had no experience with, the native peoples here had no immunity to all these Western diseases. There was an apocalypse in the Mediterranean during the 19th century BC, when, again, a lot of theories like Santorini erupted and basically blotted out the sun, and crops died, and we just started seeing all these massive migrations, peoples just sort of moving in, what they call the sea peoples, just laid empire after empire after empire to waste. The Ugarit people, the Hittite Empire, all these major empires in the Mediterranean were destroyed. But that set the stage for the rise of like Mycenaean Greece and all these new cultures, the Phoenicians and so on. So it is part of the churn. I mean, it is part of the human story. I can't, I'm not God, so I can't tell you what the ultimate meaning of it is. I can just tell you that, be not afraid. I mean, this is just the way things work. This is the way things have always worked. We are definitely, we're sort of slow walking into World War III. I mean, you have theater after theater being set up to erupt, centered in large part in the Middle East. This whole situation in Gaza, and then Hezbollah is getting involved. I mean, it's eventually going to become a regional war, but it's part of this greater war. But it's not going to be like World War II, where you're just throwing munitions en masse everywhere. It's going to be or World War I, where everybody sort of digs into the trenches. Even though the Russians tried to fight World War II in Ukraine, realized that model wasn't applicable anymore, and basically made it World War I. I mean, they just dug in, and that's basically what kind of defeated the NATO program in Ukraine. I mean, the NATO is always, NATO is hostage to all the big defense contractors, Lockheed, DynCorp, Boeing, all these companies that are, always selling all this gee whiz technology. So the Western militaries became addicted to that, but those weapons are only as good as the people using them. And, our people, the Western militaries are no good anymore. I mean, they're just, they're a joke. Even compared to what they were 30 years ago, they're a joke. And it's just completely fallen apart. So the long and short of this is that, we are in this apocalyptic process, but people forget what apocalypse actually means. It means disclosure, unveiling, right? Revelation. I mean, what happens is that things get mixed up. We see how things really are. We see the way the world really works. We see the way what human nature really is, not this sort of myth that Hollywood and high technology taught us. And then everything gets thrown up in the air. Everything gets displaced. But there's always a rebuilding process. So I don't believe, and that's what I'm saying. Like, if you read the book of Revelation, not only does it have like the happiest ending ever, but it tells you that it's going to happen again.